Straight guys, what has a woman done to flirt with you that you can never forget, in a good way? She pointed at an ad and said that guy is cute like you. First time I ever thought of myself as handsome. Nice. I dropped my phone at a bar and the girl sitting next to me said, "Oh no, I hope it isn't broken. I have to give you my number and I don't have a pen." It was incredibly clever and organic and I'll never forget it. She mentioned for me to listen to her whisper something, then instead she kissed me on the cheek. A girl just winked at me once. I did the whole thing where I looked behind me and everything. Haha, same here kind of. I was meeting a girl at a bus station and when she walked into the building she looked at me with the biggest genuine happy smile that I turned around to look for the source of her smile, which I ultimately found out was me. Man, that felt so good. Sitting at a bar with a girl on a blind date, after we'd already gone out to dinner together earlier that night. She rested her hand on my thigh. Literally no woman had ever done that before, and I just met this girl today. Don't get me wrong, I'd had sex before, but I was always the one making all the effort and risking rejection and indicating my own interest first. This time, she was making a move on me. It had never happened before. We've been together for 13 years now, married for 11. And when I tell her about that thigh thing, she doesn't even remember doing it. She was a little drunk. But that was my sign that the date was, in fact, going very well. She came over and asked to borrow my salt. It was a restaurant. Every single table had salt. Well, I was on a plane flying to boot camp, and I was seated next to this woman who seemed really cheery. She initially just asked why I was holding a singular envelope and nothing else. I didn't need any bags where I was going, and I told her it's just because it was everything I needed once I got to Paris Island. Anyways, we proceed to have one of the most enjoyable and genuine conversations I've had with a person, no less, a person I just met. We talked about our goals, aspirations, political opinions, art, music, relationships, etc. She was super intelligent and really good looking, so I figured, yeah, she's out of league and being nice. At the end of the flight, she was very direct with her intentions. She just said, "I didn't want that conversation to end, so take my number and for the love of God call me when you can." LT was super refreshing to have a woman be so direct. She wrote her number on a piece of paper with a cute little drawing on it. So then what happened was I emptied out my pockets when I got to boot camp. A drill instructor saw the paper and threw that S in the trash. I didn't have my cell phone, so I didn't have it saved either. But yeah, just being genuine, relatable, and direct. Won't forget that in my life. F that guy, by the way. I was writing up my PhD thesis and not having a good time, and she was another student in the lab. She turned up one evening with a bottle of wine and some snacks and said, "I thought you could do with a break. We're married now." Before my ex and I got together, she was a new member of our friend group. She always paid attention to what I said or what I ate. One day we were hanging out on a bench before our friends turned up, and she pulled out a backpack full of little things she knew I liked, Pop-Tarts, cherries, peanut M&Ms, etc., and told me she loved me. I had a thing for her too, but I had no idea she felt the same way. So I was kinda stunned and didn't say anything for a few seconds. She came up to me and asked me to dance. Bonus points because it was in front of my friends. Riding a bus at university to head to an exam, a girl came up to me and said, "One think I know you, are you X?" I said no, and she kept talking to me, and we walked for like 15 minutes together talking until I got to the place I was writing my exam. Felt like she was waiting for me to ask for her number, and I totally should have, but was out of it from studying. Felt surreal and never saw her on campus again. When I was in high school, the girl who sat behind me in leadership class braided the tassel on my scarf during class. The next day, she asked me for some gum. I said, "I'm chewing my last piece." She said, "That's fine," and held eye contact. So I bit off half of my gum and gave it to her. She popped it in her mouth and smiled at me. I had a good friendship with the prettiest girl at my first job, and we used to chat a lot. Once we are in a classroom talking to each other. I don't remember what we have been talking about, but we were laughing a lot and been talking to each other for a long time. Then someone who neither of us knows about comes and asks if we were cousins or something like that. I'm about to reply that she was just A friend. She was faster with the reply, he is my boyfriend. L wasn't, and proceeds to look me dead in the eye and we stare at each other for what I think was 30 seconds. That dude doesn't believe her and I said that we are indeed dating. We weren't, and she doubles down while looking me in the eyes. I had a crush on her but didn't make a move because there's no way someone like her would want something to do with me and I toughed she was just playing. Stupid mistake, regret that every day. I was in a bar once and me and this girl kept locking eyes. Before I knew it she was walking towards me. She looked into my soul and said, why haven't you asked for my number yet, and walked away. I almost fell out my chair. I am 201 centimeters tall. In a very loud bar a very small woman came to me with a hand-drawn poster. Written on it, our kids would be normal-sized. Girl at internship, 1 to 2 years older than me who was an employee, was dropping hints that she didn't had my number in case she needed anything. I pointed out that she has the number of one of our common friend. She can always contact him. I know I'm dumb. Had a girl tell me that our kids would be beautiful and that she loves my vibe. I've never had a girl ask for my number before. It was pretty awesome. Sit on my lap and then proceed to suck on my earlobe while occasionally whispering compliments into my ear. My friend that I used to hook up with came home from college and asked to hang out. We were both sitting on the couch and she walked to the kitchen to grab something. She came back, pretended to trip on something and landed on me and started cuddling me. It was hella cute. A girl I had been friends with for a while came up to me at a bar and said, "You were in my dream last night." I said, "Oh really? What was I doing in the dream?" She shyly giggled and whispered, "You were kissing me." Edit, I am not exaggerating when I say this girl looked like Sophia Loren if she was skinnier, had bigger boobs and was always in a good mood. It was the greatest night of my life, leading to the greatest 3 months of my life and ending in the most horrific heartbreak man could imagine. This smokin' hot chick came over to me and said, "Oh my god, if you were my husband we would be home making babies right now, right in front of my wife." How did your wife react? She was like, "Not in front of my husband." When we were in our early maybe we're just friends phase, she asked me how the roads were after a recent snowstorm. I said, they could use a good plowing. To which she responded, "Yeah, well so could I. We are now happily married." In university, she said her and her friends were discussing the hottest dudes in the class and they agreed I was one of them. Had never considered myself attractive at that point. Hell, I think it was the first time someone had complimented my appearance. When I was 17, I was a busboy in a sports bar. A new waitress just started, pretty cute, curly blonde hair, and the right amount of thickness. We had our introductions and she said my name would be fun to scream. Me, being a dumbass, didn't realize what she meant until about 3 years later. I was on the train coming back from a gig once and sat on the table seat with this hot chick who was the sister of one of my older brother's friends. Anyway, she starts saying, "Check out this kangaroo on my panties," and pulled her trousers down revealing her panties and lady area. In my head I was like, damn. But I just said, "That is a nice kangaroo." Doe? Was around 17 at school, and they had these pianos set up around the school and one time I was playing a song on it. I can't remember, but this really pretty and smart chick who was in a different music class came up and did an absolutely perfect improv accompaniment on the higher end. We smiled at each other, exchanged names and phone numbers to maybe meet up one day and jam/play, not sexual. But she had to move away. We keep in good regular contact nowadays, but before she left and it was her last day at the school, she said that I was pretty cute and wished she didn't have to move. Gonna try to summarize the backstory quickly, but I have this coworker that I started working with in August and quickly developed a crush for. Learned the feeling was mutual. We made out a couple times after nights out. Very suddenly everything stopped between us for a couple months before I finally asked what was up. Basically she thought I was looking for a relationship and she didn't want that, so instead of talking it out, just cut things off. We talk it out and things are cool. Anyway, still hadn't done anything with her since the talk, and one weekend me, her and 2 of our friends go to a brewery. We're sitting at a table 2 on each side. I'm next to her. I'm describing some story or something a couple drinks deep when she just reaches over and lightly taps my hand. The other 2 don't see this because it's below the table. I look down and back up to keep telling my story but don't move my hand. She takes it and slowly starts stroking her thumb across. Look at her and she just smiles. Went home with her that night lol. Once had a girl with a peace sign patch in the crotch of her pants say to me, "Give peace a chance." I did and it was glorious. I'll let you know when a girl actually flirts with me. Ah yes, the true Redditor. Well, she was pretty subtle about it. She just started to make out with me unexpectedly. So that's definitely a flirting method that works on me. I don't think I could pull it off though. Started dancing together at an outdoor college venue and I was being respectful of her space, but then she got into my bubble and started softly grinding on me while looking me straight in the eye with a "know what is going on in your pants" simile. Yeah, we eventually got married and she was spectacularly awesome. End of high school. Was always a loner. Walking to the bus stop, a girl comes from behind me almost running and immediately hold my hands while walking, not saying one word. We walked a good 15 feet holding hands before I could utter out some words. Funny thing is that was the first school day of the year. Was a very beautiful gal, so beautiful in fact I was speechless. To make it worse, every time we bumped into each other she would giggle. Gently pulled the center of my shirt closer towards her, smiled, and kissed me. Haven't forgotten it almost 14 years later. Kinda cheesy, but due to circumstances, I ended up picking up a friend of a friend from the airport. And for thanks she said she'd pay for dinner. We had never talked one-on-one but hit it off immediately. I have semi-low self-esteem, but she was talking about how cool she could thought I was. I responded with, "I could kiss you, haha." She responded with, "Please do," with this smirk that melted me. It was in the eyes, I'll never forget it. Another time I commented that liked her shade of lipstick and she said, with the same face, "Oh yeah. What are you gonna do about it?" She was the personification of the emoji haha. When I was 21 years old I met this black girl. She was so sweet and kind, but I was already very worried about being rejected that I kept my distance. We used to meet at random places and speak for hours. I started developing feelings for her, but I really just wanted it to go away eventually. One day, after we had spoken for little a while, she handed over a letter. And she said, "Read it when you get home and please do not make me suffer." I read it and it was the sweetest words someone had ever told me. I noticed the paper was kinda crumpled and the end letters were blurry at some parts. And then it hit me. She was walking around with this letter to give it to me. We couldn't date at all because of her family's religion, but I think it was one of the most romantic things a girl has ever done to me. I don't know if it counts, but here it is. She wanted to blow me off amidst a party, right there and then. I later found out she had a boyfriend. At a pool party, playing chicken, while on my shoulders she hugged and purred. It was an amazing sound that gave me magical goosebumps. I still remember the sound 20 years later. Came back home from traveling for over a year. Had a girlfriend, and even though we had been together for just 3 months, I was dedicated to make it work. 7 years later we're still happily together. Now I was never much of a player, but I was at the bar at a party and the hottest girl from my scouts group stood next to me. I didn't know her well as she was a few years younger, but we just say hi. And out of the blue she goes, "You look yummy tonight." She was just the right combination of cute and sexy to pull that off too. I think I feared for my faithfulness and just ran off. I had a very brief summer fling in my early 20s with a young woman with Indian descent. The first time we met, we were having drinks, and 2 Indian guys came and started hassling her and Elle about how she should only be dating Indian guys. I really didn't have time to say anything, and she began totally destroying them, with a litany of incredibly takedowns about their demeanor and appearance. That ended with something like, "I'm plenty into Indian guys, sorry you're jealous, I'm into him, just definitely not into you, so F off." This is the first and only time I've ever seen something like this, and I was blown away that it first of all happened, at all, and how powerfully she responded. So this girl was in a changing room, House of Fraser Bluewater for any UK people. She was trying on dresses for a wedding. I went into the changing room and she came out of another one and asked me for a hand with the zip of her dress. I of course said yes and stepped into her changing cubicle and unzipped the dress. She let it fall to the floor and just stood there in her G-string and a smile. "We are married now." The woman I lost my virginity to gave me a few golden nuggets I'll never forget. The sex was subpar for someone who often has it to feel better, but anyway, here's one of the nuggets. She had just learned that I was a virgin and she sat in my lap for most of that night. We were at a party, and it was a masquerade. I had dressed up as Jack Skellington. I had a tailored suit and face paint on. She helped me take the face paint off later that night. While we were still at the party, someone walked in on us and said something like, well, what do we have here? I said hey. And she said I'm helping him wash the face paint away, he looks cuter this way. And that made my heart soar. She took tender care of me the whole night. At a happy hour she walked over to me while I was listening to some of my male friends talk, stood on her tiptoes and whispered in my ear I'm not wearing any underwear. She walked away back to her group and when she was almost there she turned back with a sly smile. I was at a concert and a girl tapped me on the shoulder and when I looked over she showed me her phone and it said you're cute on it. This was back in Nokia days where each letter took several presses to type on the keypad. We went outside to share a cig afterward and ended up seeing each other for a while. I was studying at a cafe and she sat down and chatted with me since the other tables were full. I didn't really think much of it until I was reviewing my notes for my exam later and found her phone number upside down at the top of one of the pages. She held my hand as she did her job. She didn't need to hold my hand to do her job. As she did not need her hands, I assume she was / a professional soccer player? She climbed on top me and asked you wanna put your nuts in these guts? For context, we had met previously, but she had a boyfriend at the time. A few years later we were both single, and very into one another. This was just our first time being alone. I'm sure it was nice and all, but that must be the least sexy term for sex that I have ever heard. Went out for beers with my older brother, his wife and a few other family members. One of the group is my Sil's cousin. I've had a huge crush on her since we first met. At this time she's married and I was single. Drinks were had and at one point she climbed into my lap and snuggled into it. Grind. Now at this point I was drunk, aroused, and confused. We sat like that for maybe 10 to 15 minutes. She got up, kissed me on the cheek and sat across from me the rest of our time there. For the life of me, I can't figure out why she did that. Good memories, Wendy. She was sitting opposite of me in the tram. She shyly looked at me with an appreciative smile until I looked and smiled too, held her gaze for a few seconds, then looked away again. Repeated this a few times. When she got to her stop, she stood up, stood beside me, looked at me with a smile on her face again, then walked to the door to get off. When she stood outside the tram, she turned her head to find my gaze, as I had turned my head as well to see her, and she smiled again. Now, why is this incredibly tame, unspectacular, unremarkable encounter, compared with all the other stories in this thread, something that I can never forget? Because this happened only a few weeks ago, and in all my life, and I'm 36, this was the first and only time this has ever happened to me. I will never forget the way she looked at me, and cherish it forever. Old dude here. When I was young and attractive I got all the usual stuff women dole out, you know, pinch on the butt, you have a cute face, how about dinner at my place, etc. The one that really stands out though wasn't a flirtation but an innocent reaction. Me and a couple of my guy friends sat down at a table at IHOP. The young waitress came over to us, took one look at me, then suddenly found herself unable to function. Just trying to give us our water was painful to watch. When she stepped away, one of my friends said, "Gosh Bob, you had that girl all turned around." It was high school and I had a huge crush on this girl. Apparently it was pretty obvious because one day she stopped at my car as I was leaving school and confronted me. She said she heard from a friend that I might have a crush on her and asked if it's true. I told her yes and she looked at me for a second, then responded, "Does that mean I can kiss you?" It was my first kiss and I was on Cloud 9 the rest of the day. "You're dangerous to be around." I stopped mid-step and turned. I thought it was such an odd and rather awful thing to say to given that I'd not nor ever come across in such a negative way. Why would you say that?" Elle asked, completely perplexed and hurt by the insinuation that I was somehow an awful man while on what I thought was the start of a new adventure in life with this girl that I had genuine feelings for. Because you're easy to fall in love with. The universe ended at that moment and the air around me and everything including that tiny bit of earth I stood on was swept away. I stopped breathing and I remember a gasp. It was me. I gasped knowing that right there and then this moment would always mean the world to me. She asked me questions about my hobbies and genuinely seemed interested in my responses. The woman has been my wife for almost 7 years now. My arm was around her neck, she was holding me from behind my back, essentially side hug, standing side by side. She is shorter than me, looks up to me sideways and just kissed on my cheek. I had to play it cool as if we did that regularly, but my mind was high on dopamine. It kinda became a normal thing for her to kiss me on my cheeks then on though. Had a random woman come up and kiss me at a bar. Another time, a group of young women in the car kept honking and blowing kisses. We get to a red light and one moons me and asks if I want her. Nothing happened after that. I was in a coffee shop doing a run for the office when this woman that was in her early 50s, I'm in my 20s, come in and she was an absolute bombshell. She walked up to buy her coffee and said, "What a gentleman you are buying all the coffee. Maybe you can buy me one next time," and she just gave me her phone number. It happened so fast I didn't even have time to react. LOL, I was just shell-shocked. Mouth wide open. We banged the next day. I'm a lesbian but I think it still counts. A couple years ago, I mentioned to a girl that I like sunflowers. Soon after I left the club, she sent me an image of my face edited into a sunflower, with Comic Sans text at the bottom saying, "Will you go out with me? I am now married to her." There was a girl who liked me and she slapped my butt. I'm a nurse in surgery. Once, after putting the patient to sleep, the resident and I were trying to get a tourniquet around their leg. One of the tubes flipped up and kinda slapped my cheek. She threw her head back laughing and as she apologized, she rested her forehead on my chest for a second or two. I'm not one to quickly pick up on when women are flirting, but that was so blatant and cute that I don't think I'll ever forget it. That said, we're both married so I tried to immediately play it off. I was in high school, at one of those UN models where you represent your school. This girl that had broken her ankle or something a week prior was looking at me from the first day, although she was on a wheelchair. While I was standing talking with a couple of guys, she bumps her wheelchair against my leg and when turn around she just looks at me and smiles, without apologizing. We hung out together for a while but it didn't really stick for either one of us. I was lying in a hammock and she climbed in with me and cuddled on my chest. I'm usually fairly oblivious to hints but I did catch that one. People would imagine this gets more stale with years of marriage, but my wife will flirt and not realize how hot she's being. Recently she walked just into the hall, turned and smiled at me for a few seconds, and while still smiling and looking directly at me tipped her head briefly in the direction of the bedroom then turned and went in. I hopped off the couch pretty quick. At work, I shared a big office with 2 other guys. She would come in occasionally, sit down, and shoot the S. One time she extended her hand for my phone and asked if I had any cool games on it. I had like 1 or 2, so I handed it over, and she just sat there playing games for a few minutes. Then she got up, handed me the phone, and informed me her number was in it. Girl told me that she bought new underwear just to feel sexy for me. It's still etched into my brain a decade later. One slammed me against the wall at a bar and told May should stop goofing around and be aware that I was going home with her that night. One just gave me massive eyes on the subway but neither of us spoke. She just handed her phone over with a small note written something like, "You're cute, can I get your number?" I wrote it down on her phone and got off so we had met but never heard each other's voice. One girl danced with me and the first thing she said was she asked if I was a good kisser. I said yes, so she told me to prove it. I had a good friend and we were sleeping a bunch of people in a room and she said she was cold. I jokingly said I could warm her but we weren't being that flirty before and everyone was awake so I didn't think she would. She got into my bed and pressed her ass against my DK. We're married now. When I was 14, a year after I'd moved to London, the hottest girl in my year kept flirting with me whenever I walked past her. I thought she was taking the piss. She kept winking at me and saying, "All right sexy," and telling her friends I well fancy him but I felt like I was being set up for a prank because girls never talked to me like that. Even the hardest guy in my year came over and had a go at me saying if you don't want to go out with her, I will. Again thought I was being set up. They dated, which made more sense than me dating her. A couple of months later I transferred schools. She found out on my last day and found me to say goodbye and asked why I was weird with her and didn't date her. I told that, assumed it was a joke, and she got upset and said no, she really liked me. Never saw any of those people again, but always remembered the hottest girl at school fancied me. I have a couple of these. When I met one of my college girlfriends, she gave me the F me eyes within like half an hour of us talking. We were walking around in a Target and I didn't annoy her and she got grabby and gave me that look and I about goddamn melted. Another one, I was visiting an auntie on her cabin on an island and there was an island teen community dance. I didn't know anyone, so I wasn't being very outgoing, and some girl comes and talks to me. Turns out she was visiting from England and didn't know anyone either. We talked and an hour later she said something along the lines of it would be so cool if could lose my virginity in the States. Whoa. Yeah. Okay. I wish I could remember her last name and find her on the internet. Last one, I was on a tour as a musician and we were taking a free day on Mackinac Island in Michigan. I saw this absolutely gorgeous redhead woman with bright green eyes in this souvenir shop. I went in and bought a little knick-knack thing and didn't try to hit on her or anything. I was just nervous and smiley, and she asked me when we were leaving the island and if I wanted to get dinner. I could not believe my luck. That was all like 25 years ago. Now, I've been married for 19, have a dad bod and lost my hair and forgot how to flirt now. Before my girlfriend and I slept together and were just flirting around, she sent a message saying I've been thinking of you a lot today, you should come over later, and sent me a picture of her pruned up fingers. I never knew a picture of someone's fingers could turn me on so much, and I immediately went over after I got done with work. About 2 weeks after I got married, I was standing at a bus stop on my way to work and there is this girl standing there, and it's the only time in my life I've ever been 100% sure a girl was flirting with me. Inside I was like, WTF, women never do this to me, so I sort of flashed her my wedding ring casually, just enough for her to notice it without saying anything, just to see what would happen. Immediately he tone changed from flirty to serious, and I will never forget this time because I guess she wasn't into married men. Not that I would be into cheating on my wife. When I got to work I called my wife and told her what had happened and we had a good laugh. We're 2 months away from 10 years married now and we have a kid who is 3 years old. Smiley face. High school. First relationship ever. Still in high school and still in the same relationship, but F it, this post didn't specify. I'm tired as hell and sitting next to her. Then all of a sudden she asks me if my shoulders are comfortable. Of course, she proceeded to lay her head on my shoulder. This one is and will stay with me forever. I was chatting with my now ex and it was late at night and I asked her why is she up so late and not asleep like always, and the utmost sincerity she said, because I want to talk with you more, and let me tell you that felt awesome. I'm sure if I try and remember I'll remember more instances, but this one stands out. Honestly, just gave me a genuine compliment about how safe she felt around me, said I was funny, and yes, she wants to go on a second date. This was 5 years ago, our wedding is in July. She saw me with a Linkin Park t-shirt on the office. Next day, she sent me via LinkedIn a popular YouTube video here on Spain of 2 rats fighting for food with Numb as the soundtrack. She matched my vibe perfectly, to be honest. It wasn't really flirtatious, but the best compliment I ever received was when one of my friends told me that I was the perfect mixture of left-brained and right-brained. Until then, I was always told by everyone that I was left-brained, not in that term, necessarily, but that I was very analytical, for example a boring nerd, basically. No one ever really acknowledged my strongly creative side. Until her. That was 14 years ago and I've basically been riding that high since then, because I am creative and imaginative, but I always thought it was useless to put forth that part of my personality until she said that, because I didn't think anyone noticed or cared about my right brain strengths. She asked me what the dress code was for the evening. I said there was none. She replied, I'll wear a dress, but you'll be the only one to know I'm not wearing underwear. Oh. Back in high school, girl grabbed my hand and put it on her upper thigh, under her skirt, saying she ran into a table and wanted me to feel the bruise. I should add we were sitting in a movie theater at the time. I just said yeah, that feels bad and kept watching the movie. Still can't believe how oblivious I was. I was the driver for our lunch group. She hopped behind me, I'm tall, and I said put your feet anywhere you can fit them. She leans up and says in my ear how about on your shoulders. I don't remember much after that. The blood flow was diverted from my brain. She rubbed a lime wedge on my hand, poured salt on it, and then licked it off before taking a tequila shot. I then proceeded to do nothing because I had zero self-confidence and convinced myself it wasn't flirting. Handed me a beer koozie that asked me to come home with her. I had been in a relationship so long that I thought it was a joke, thanked her, and left. Realized later that she was shooting her shot and felt bad that I was so oblivious. Knew the girl for a while and was at a small gathering. She has a boyfriend. My fiancé just dumped me, so great start. My buddy was trying to get me to go to this show with him and I wasn't about it and he had said he's gonna find a way to get me to go and I said sure, okay bud. Without saying more than a simple hi to each other, the girl comes over and asks if I was going to the show and I said, no, she said I should. I asked why and she leans in and says, what if there was a wormhole there for you? I talked to my friend later and said wow, you really went there didn't you? He looked confused. I told him what happened and he laughed his ass off and said he was in no way a part of that but that was hilarious. I didn't go to the show. I worked with a girl at a shoe store and my first day meeting her, she stared at me throughout the day until finally following me into the back stocking room, threw me against the wall and gave me one of the most passionate kisses I ever received. We slept together a few times but she had a boyfriend so it just kind of fizzled out. Never will forget her though. It's not really flirting but it was a moment I won't forget because at the time I had horrible time talking to women. I was in Japan during Halloween in 2013. Friends and I went out and we were at the mall area where it was the hangout spot for a lot of people. 90% of the locals in costumes. I was enjoying the scene, just people watching, and noticed a really pretty Japanese girl, my type of a lady, too, and she was in a Sully outfit from Monsters Inc. It was a two-piece bikini that was fluffy with Sully horns on her head and fluffy gloves that looked like Sully's hands. I was so struck by how pretty and cute she looked and just stared and said, "Oh Sully." She noticed and as she was passing by she gave me a really bright and a pretty smile and did the really cute one-shoulder shrug as she waved at me. Think she gave me a wink too. I just froze in place because it just stunned me and watched her disappear into the crowd. I was a virgin then and had no experience flirting with women, 23 at the time. I still remember to this day. Was shooting pool in a bar and this girl reached from behind and grabbed my crotch when I bent over to take a shot. We talked a bit and she and her friend invited me back to their place. I drove them. When we got there they hopped out, said thanks and ran off. Turns out I was simply a free Uber, lol. This isn't so much flirting since we were dating, but it is my best story. We'd been seeing each other about a month but hadn't had sex yet. We were parked in her car and she randomly showed me her IUD implantation certificate. I knew we'd be having unprotected intercourse. Definitely heavy flirting, but a beautiful mixed-race girl grabbed me, sat me down, stuck an earphone in my one ear and she had the other and kissed me like it was her last kiss and dry humped me like a stripper and F'd off, ha ha ha. Well, a girl in my class threw me a paper once. I opened it and it said wanna go on a relationship with me. I was 14, she was 16. I have never had a relationship so I thought it's a trap. I said no. She then would literally chase me everywhere during breaks and she would tell me that if we don't get on a relationship her friend will hit me. So I got scared of her big friend and said okay. She was hot. And I wanted to say yes from the beginning but didn't trust her. Every time I cut my fingernails, I like to scratch my husband's back because the fabric of his shirt buffs them nicely. It was something my mom used to do with me and my sisters growing up, and I always liked it and didn't think it was like a sexual thing. When I was hanging out with him back in the day, I started doing it to him because I just wanted an excuse to touch him. He never complained. When we started dating he was like, "Hey, back scratches feel good b." Getting surprised by me touching his back in a friendly way is awesome. See, he was like, I gotta lock this lady down because love this and I will die if she ever scratches someone else's back. So now it's definitely something I do and he will give me the eyebrow wiggles because he knows I'm flirting with him. It just happened with me last week. So it's a term end in my college, and summer vacation is about to start. Campus was quite empty, and I was reading in library and was waiting for my friend to return her notes I took earlier and so I can leave for my home. I live in college hostel during the semesters. I was reading and was in a hurry to leave as my bus time was due, and her call came. She asked me to come out of the library so she could collect her notebook. When I came out of the library, my brain froze for a moment. She was in a beautiful dress and was looking very beautiful. The thing is, she never wore such dresses in college like ever, even during college fests or at celebrations, and I mean there was no occasion, it was just an exchange of notes. To add more to this, she brought cold coffee. Summer is going on right now, especially for me that she made herself at home. When she gave me the coffee, everyone who was there on campus were looking at us. My idiot of mind doesn't know what to say. I gave her the notebook and only word that came out of my mouth was thank you. She smiled, and while leaving, she said, tell me later how was the coffee, as she made it for first time. It was supposed to be a simple exchange of notes which turns out to be something I can't describe. I'm not boasting, but I'm a pretty smart person, but when it comes to girls, I become an idiot. So, I might be overthinking, though when she handed me the coffee, our eyes locked for a moment and time literally froze, and I don't know what was happening. We both are pretty busy in our studies right now and don't have much time to communicate, but we'll see where this leads when we meet again in the next term. She said, let me put these bad boys on you, and then turned me around and cuffed me. Turns out I was getting arrested. So not quite flirting. And not in a good way. While I consider this one of my regrets in life that wish I could get a second chance at, I know that I was not ready mentally or emotionally ready for being in any sort of relationship. When I worked at convenience store, there was a regular customer, that was maybe 1 or 2 years older than me, that would come in. She would hold conversations with me while I was working and cashing people out. She would stand to the side near my register and just talk about her day. She made mention of her being in a relationship with a boyfriend. So once that was known, I told myself that she wasn't flirting, and she was just a nice girl. Then a few times, she would come in with friends and introduce them to me, and that was followed by her coming in with her mother to meet me. Her mother would come in a couple more times and tell me her daughter's boyfriend was an abusive a-hole, and that she hopes she could find someone better. She moved away, but before she left she came in and gave the tightest and longest hug LVE had experienced, and she told me she would miss me the most. Me, 13 male, with my sister, 15 female, at the fashion show in the UK. This was back when Borat came out, so what, 2006 to 7? I'm tall for my age, I'm 6 feet 2. We are walking round together and my sister gets collared by someone to try some makeup or something. Another saleswoman comes up to me and asked, why don't you buy your girlfriend some edible underwear? I reply, she's not my girlfriend, she's my sister. The woman obviously says, oh no, don't do that then, but then goes, so you don't have a girlfriend? I say, no, I haven't met the right one. She looked at me like I was a piece of meat. 13-year-old me clearly didn't clock it, but now I think, damn, I could have bagged the older chick. In all honesty, if you like a guy, the best thing you can do is just be upfront, or at least clear you like them. Don't hint or think they feel the same. If they do and are shy, they won't say s, so just be clear. Trust me, they'll start showing it back if they like you. They just don't want to be humiliated.